Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August Committee of Adjustment meeting of the Township of Ramara. I guess the first thing we have on our agenda is we have to read the chair's introduction of this committee, and which I will do right now. In accordance with section 44, subsection 1 of the Planning Act, the Council of the Township of Ramara has appointed this Committee of Adjustment to hear applications for variances to the zoning bylaw and applications for consent to sever land. The members of this committee are private citizens who are not members of council, nor are they employees. Committee members are provided with information about each application prior to the public hearing to enable them to review the sections of the township bylaws which are relevant and to make a site visit if necessary. No discussion of applications occur, nor will any decisions be made outside of this public hearing. The procedure for the hearing application is as follows. Number one, the Secretary Treasurer will describe the application and the extent of the processing to date. Number two, the applicant or agent will be asked for his or her comments. Number three, the members of the audience will be asked for their comments. Number four, then the applicant may then provide further information. And number five, committee members will then provide questions or comments to be followed by the decision of the committee. A written copy of the notice of decision will be sent to the applicant and anyone who provides the Secretary Treasurer with a written request, including their full name and address. Decisions of this committee may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant, minister, or a specified person or public body. The procedure is included with the notice of decision, and if you wish to be advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, you must request in writing a copy of this committee's decision. Once the application has been heard by the committee and the 20-day appeal period has ended, the application sign should be removed from your property. The sign can be then returned to the township for use or recycling. Okay, and now I'm going to introduce the committee this morning. To my left is Dan Walker. Next to him is Tom Truax. To my right is Dan McMillan. And I'm Randy Warren. I'm acting chair for the day in the absence of our chairperson. Also, we have our Secretary Treasurer, Carissa Barker, Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Jen Strong, and Planning Assistant Taya Graham was here, but she's in behind. Okay. Please address all comments to the chair and ensure all cell phones are silenced to ensure that an orderly meeting is maintained. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Township of Ramara YouTube channel. Anyone who's invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or Secretary Treasurer have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of the debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Please note that the meeting is also being recorded and also being live streamed, and that all or some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So I guess the next thing we have to deal with is disclosure of any pecuniary interest by any of the members. It appears that none is noted. And I guess we'll go on with the first application. Carissa, are you going to, first off, do we have someone that's representing that here or on Zoom?
Yes, I believe the applicant is here with us today. Yeah.
Would you like to come forward and just state your name and just press the button on the
Good morning. My name is Marna Zavolat, and I'm the applicant for the property located for the first minor variance.
Okay, very good. If you don't mind sitting down until the Carissa reads the report, and then we'll get you up to give any further comments.
Sure.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So we are going to discuss minor variance file A724 today, which is located at 2294 and 2298 Highway 12. The applicant is Mana Zavalat, and the property owner is 1000 239297 Ontario Inc. The purpose of the application before committee today is to request a reduction in the minimum number of required parking spaces, a reduction in the minimum interior side yard setback, minimum landscape to open space, and some alterations to the parking space dimensions. This will enable a mixed-use development on the subject property with 3 commercial units on the main floor and 30 apartments on the upper floors of the 4-story building. The table in front of you shows the variances that are requested. The proposed parking spaces for the required spaces are reduced to 27 as the zoning bylaw requires 1.5 spaces per unit, so it'd be 45 spaces. They're requesting 27, so a variance of 18. The required commercial parking is going to be reduced to 0 for a variance of 19. The parking space dimensions will be decreased slightly of 0.2 meters to 2.6 meters in width, where the bylaw requirement is 2.8. They're also varying the parking for the physically disabled in our zoning bylaw to be in line with OREG 191/11, which is the integrated accessibility standards. So it requires a type A and a type B space with an access aisle in between, and I will show that, but that's what that variance is. And then they're also looking for a reduction in the minimum interior side yard setbacks in the north and south side of the building to 0, and a reduction in the minimum landscaped open space for the general village commercial area from 20% down to 10%. So on the screen before you shows the two properties. Once the 2 properties are merged, they'll have a land area of about 0.45 acres with 33 meters of frontage and about 50 meters in depth. You can see there, due to the adjacent building, that the lot is irregular in shape. The current use of the property is a mixed-use building with commercial unit on the main floor and apartment. I'm not sure if there's 1 or 2 apartments up there, but there's definitely living space in apartments on the 2nd floor. And the proposed use is the mixed building with, again, commercial units on the main floor and then 3 levels of residential. So similar to what's existing, just more intense. This is the site plan for the site. I just wanted to kind of go through each individual variance to show you what is being varied. I've adjusted it so that Highway 12 is actually on the bottom of the screen. So north is not straight up, as you can see on the compass. So the first variance is for the required spaces. So there's 27 required parking spaces located at the rear of the building. There's also 10 surplus spaces at the front of the building. And the reason for that is because the MTO will not allow for required parking spaces to be located within the 14-meter setback, which I will get into that further, but I just wanted to note that the variance is asking for 27, but there are 37 spaces proposed in total. We also have changes to the accessibility spaces as well as the width of the parking space. So it's going down about 2/3 of a foot for the overall width of the spaces. And then this is that type A, type B space that's within those accessibility standards under the OREG, showing sort of the 1 space with the access aisle in between and then the accessible space next door. These are your 0 side yard setbacks with the green arrows that I won't use again because they're hard to see. So the building will go from lot line to lot line, and you sort of see there's a bit of an access path that kind of goes, you can see my cursor. Oh, there we go. So you can see here, the cars actually go in this way. So there is a wall sort of that comes down right onto the side of the property line. So the cars will drive through into the back. And then this red arrow is just showing like the minimum landscaped open space with the buffer at the back and then some landscape at the front. There's also a bit of landscape space over here as well. So this is the front elevation of the building. So it shows the parking spaces into the front. And so you'd be standing, I guess, kind of in the middle of the highway from this view. So you've got your 3 commercial units on the bottom, and there's that access way that I was speaking of on the right-hand side. And then the 3 levels of apartments up top. And then this is the rear elevation of the building. So it's kind of difficult to see it on the site plan, but the parking actually goes under the building at the back in one spot. It's sort of cantilevered over for some covered parking spaces at the back. So I wanted to go through each individual variance so that the committee has a thorough understanding of the variances that are being requested and where they're coming from, and then also how any of the sort of technical aspects of the application will be dealt with through the site plan application. So the first variance I wanted to speak to was the reduction in the number of required parking spaces. So as I was saying, we're varying it down to 27. The surplus parking spaces, 10, are located at the front of the building. So the reason for that is that the MTO has a policy that says no required parking, or at least the bare minimum required parking to be located in the front yard. We've discussed this with them through email back and forth. So the reason they're doing it is because if they ever widen Highway 12, they want to have that 14-meter space. So as you can see, the 14 meters, if Highway 12 is ever widened through Brecken, will take quite a bit of parking from everybody actually, and some buildings. So the idea of making it so that those are surplus is that when and if MTO ever does come to widen, you know, the applicant is saying, that's fine, go ahead and take those spaces. It's not going to affect the integrity of my business. So it sort of removes the barriers of the MTO to be able to actually widen and push through. There is, for the commercial parking, there are quite a few commercial parking spaces within the municipal area of Brecken. We have spaces at the municipal office. We have on-street parking on 47, just down on the south side of that picture there on the left. There's also parking spaces at the Brecken Ballpark and the medical center. So there are parking spaces for commercial uses. The municipality also has a cash in lieu of parking bylaw with the understanding that these spaces exist. So that's where the commercial is covered. And then there is 27 spaces for the residential, but just kind of remembering that there is still the 10 in front. So if at some point the highway does get pushed through, there will be a parking solution for many that will be sort of accommodated at that time. And here is the screen again, just sort of showing on the right-hand side, you have your 10 parking spaces in proximity to the highway, and then you have your 27 at the rear. So then the next variance is the size of the parking spaces. So right now, our zoning bylaw requires 2.8 meters, and the request is putting down to 2.6. This is just so they can get the 27 parking spaces in the back of the parking lot. I'm just trying to get as much as we can. There's a parking justification report was submitted, and it's demonstrated that St. Catharines, Kitchener, Oakville have smaller spaces at 2.6 and some even at 2.5. The minimum requirement for accessible spaces for the type A is 2.4, so the 2.6 can be considered reasonable. And then this is the diagram for the accessible parking spaces. So you have your type A and your type B with the access aisle in the middle, and it just sort of, you know, gets the parking spaces to kind of share the accessibility space. And you'll notice that these are actually quite prevalent now. I've noticed them sort of in City of Aurelia. And actually when I was in Hawaii, I noticed them. I was excited about them, but because it was the first time I had seen them, but they are nice. They kind of keep the parking to the right area, and then they have the accessibility aisle in the middle, which sort of helps control the parking. And we have our interior side yard setback. So there is a request for a reduction to 0. Interior side yards are traditionally used for drainage swales, storage of outside mechanical equipment such as propane tanks, air conditioners. We're really used to seeing slight reductions in interior side yards in your residential areas, you know, your shoreline residential, that kind of thing, where they require 1.5 and they're looking to put it down to 1.2, for example. It is not uncommon for downtowns to have 0 side yard setbacks for interior side yards, and the application is subject to site plan approval. So that will include a thorough review of the stormwater management, the site grading, and then any construction considerations are dealt with at the building permit stage. So there's certain requirements that the building department spoke about in terms of the Ontario Building Code, where things are not like improved, so to stop sort of that fire spread, which is explained in code references that that's their expertise, not mine. So I wanted to show an example of a similar downtown that has 0 side yard setbacks. This is Beaton. Beaton is considered comparable to Ramara. When I was the economic development officer, we did a first impressions community exchange with them for beautifying downtowns. And we were actually paired with Beaton because of similar size, you know, sort of a main drag highway. They have a county road that sort of runs through. You can see there's a transport truck in the Google Street View on the right-hand side. So they have a lot of the same environmental considerations with noise and parking that we do. So here you have a downtown where you have 0 setbacks all the way across. You've got the commercial on the bottom, you've got the residential on top. And then you can see on the top left-hand side, those are the assessment parcels. So these are, it's not like it's one big complex that has it. These are separately assessed parcels. I can't see who owns them, but They are all separately assessed parcels with the 0 side yard setbacks, access through the back at the front. And then they're quite close to the street there. They luckily have on-street parking on the side, but just to kind of give you an idea of a community that has a comparable downtown to what Brecken could be. Onto the minimum landscaped open space. So the village commercial zone requires a 20% minimum landscaped open space for that zone. And that's for almost all of the uses. There are other spots in the zoning bylaw that do allow for 10%, such as the village industrial zone and the industrial zones. And for motor vehicle service stations, village commercial actually allows for a 10% reduction. And motor vehicle service stations are permitted on this lot and lots that are zoned BC. So the residential zones don't have minimum landscaped open space, they just have lot coverage. So site plan control will address things like snow storage, open space, landscape plan, that kind of thing. And again, back to our example in Beaton, they don't have landscaped open space on those. Like there's a little bit at the back, and there will be some on this application because there's the buffer strip at the back that's required. But just to sort of show the committee something comparable. So site plan application, this will require site plan application. We are also putting a condition that it requires site plan application regardless under the development, it will be required, but we just wanted to make sure that we captured that in the variance decision. Site plan application is an application under the Planning Act. So it will be sure that it meets all of the policies, including the zoning bylaw, the official plan, provincial policy, MTO policies, and it would include CN policies if applicable, but in this case it's not. So studies that are included in the site plan application include things like traffic impact study to assess the ingress and egress to the site, stormwater management report, site grading plans, functional servicing report, because the property is on municipal water and sewer. And all of these studies are peer reviewed by township staff and consultants and are also circulated and reviewed to the MTO. So comments that have been received from the Committee of Adjustment circulation for the variance. The building department had no concerns with the minor variance, but did put in that sort of note about the special attention for the building design because of the decreased setback. So this is reviewed further at site plan approval and the building permit stage. The infrastructure department noted that snow storage will need to be demonstrated. They know that there is insufficient parking if the MTO ever actually took the widening for the residential spaces. The stormwater management will be confirmed. The laneway usage will be subject to an agreement. Now, this agreement will be referenced in the site plan application, but will likely also be a separate use of that laneway agreement in case there's any improvements, maintenance, those types of things. The school board would like any school board conditions to be included in any future agreements. They will be circulated for the site plan application because it's creating dwelling units. And then the MTO have not provided any formal comments at this time, although we have spoken with the MTO on several occasions about the application, and they will be circulated through their site plan, through the site plan application process, and the applicant will be required to get a building and land use permit as the property is within the MTO controlled area. We also received some comments from MJ Kelly on behalf of a group called the Brecken Villagers. The 4 pages of comments are included in the report, and the report summarized the comments. So I'm just going to kind of touch on them lightly in this presentation. So the first section of the comments related to ownership. So the property ownership doesn't have any bearing on the application from a land use planning perspective. The ownership is provided in the notice. There was also concerns regarding the driveway and the parking access in proximity to the traffic lights, the use of municipal laneway at the rear of the property, drainage and runoff in the parking lot and in the laneway, garbage and snow removal, lack of park space. Most of these are addressed through the site plan application itself. The traffic impact study is going to be required as part of the site plan application. So it will review the ingress and egress to the site and decide if there needs to be any changes at that time. It will also review, the impact on O'Neill Street because that laneway intersects with O'Neill Street sort of at the end of the way that the traffic is going out. And things like cash and lieu parkland is taken for smaller developments because you don't have to create a park space in every single development. So cash is taken in lieu of parkland, and then that's put towards municipal parks plans. And there were also comments about height, buffer strips, things like that. So the height and the buffer strips, they meet the zoning bylaw. This property development meets those things, and everything's confirmed in the technical review through the site plan application. So I just wanted to note that it is important today that we are reviewing the 4 items in the variance. So we're reviewing the interior side yard setback, parking spaces, minimum landscaped open space, and the parking space dimensions. So those are the 4 items that are being reviewed. The development, the ingress, the egress, all that's all dealt with through site plan application and isn't part of this minor variance application at this time. Okay. So into the planning policy, the County of Simcoe has this property designated as settlement. The Township of Ramara official plan has it as village and village commercial in the Brecken secondary plan, and the zoning bylaw has this property zoned as village commercial. The policies in the township, county, and provincial all promote development and intensification within fully serviced settlement areas. Policies direct population, commercial, multiple types of housing, all of those things within these primary settlement areas. And that's what Brecken is. We have one primary, like technically there's 2. There's Lagoon City and Brecken are our fully serviced settlement areas. And that's where we need to have the growth. We need to have the intensification. County of Simcoe has targets for intensification within the fully serviced settlement areas, which is what this application is achieving. And it is supported by policy. It isn't conflicting with any of the policies contained within the PPS growth plan, County OP, Ramara OP, or zoning bylaw. It's supporting housing stock, housing type for rental, unit type 1 to 2 bedroom units, mixed use of commercial and residential, redevelopment, revitalization. It's protecting transportation and infrastructure corridor. And again, it's meeting that intensification target that we need to see to get these numbers in our settlement areas. So the suggested motion and conditions for the application are that we would recommend as staff, subject to the recommended conditions, that the application does meet the 4 tests. It meets the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. It meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The requested variances are desirable for the appropriate development of the subject plans, and the variances can be considered minor in nature. Did want to have it very clear that there are conditions attached to this variance application. However, as if the committee goes forward with the suggested motion, one being that the variances pertain only to the request as submitted with the application. So what does that mean? That means if the application comes back with a 5th story on it or something, then that doesn't match, right? It has to match what's being proposed. That's just sort of a protection, and it's kind of a blanket clause we put on a lot of variances, but this is a really good example of why we would have it. And then that the owners obtain site plan control application. Again, like I said, this is required anyways, but we just want it very clear that it's required. And this is inclusive of an agreement pertaining to the construction, snow storage removal, maintenance, use of the laneway at the rear of the property, and to ensure the appropriate and orderly development of the subject lands, including stormwater management. And really at that point, anything else is flagged during the site plan application that's required. So it's not just limited to those. Anything that's additional from the site plan application through that technical review will be included in the agreement. And then also 2294 and 2298, they need to merge together in order for this to work. One of the properties in the report, I can't remember which one, but one was created by consent. So we'll have to do a cancellation certificate for that, and we'll merge the 2 lots together. So in summary, in staff's opinion, if the conditions are attached to the variance could be supported. Thank you.
Okay, that's all you have, Jen, for us now? Okay. Ma'am, would you like to come forward and give the committee and the public here a bit more information on this project?
Sure. So again, good morning, Mr. Chair, committee member, township staff. My name is Mana Zavolat, and I'm here to discuss about this project located at 2298-2294 Highway 12 in Bergen. As Mrs. Song already described in a detailed way through about the project description and also its analysis with the different policy framework, I'm just going to focus on the benefit that this project going to bring to the township of the Ramara. Next slide. Let's begin by examining the critical housing needs in Ramara. According to Stat Canada, Ramara is a home to 4,375 townhouses. About 70% of the townhouse in Ramara consist of one or two people, highlighting the strong need for smaller, affordable rental units. The majority of residents are aged between 50 to 75, underscoring the demand for accessible, low-maintenance living option. Additionally, there are 380 single-parent households, underscore the importance of the affordable housing solution for diverse family structure. Next slide. These demographics illustrate the critical need for purpose-built rental housing that caters to smaller household, senior, and single-parent families. Our proposal is designed to meet these specific needs, ensuring that development serves the community effectively. Next slide, please. There are several key reasons why we are proposing this purpose-built rental building, starting with the housing needs. Rural community, including Ramara, have seen an increase in demand for affordable rental housing due to the population growth, aging population, and immigration of the people seeking more affordable living conditions outside of urban center. Our development aim to cater to a broad range of the population, including young families, seniors, and seasonal workers. New residents brought in by the availability of the rental housing can contribute to the local business and services, further stimulating economic growth. Ramara's significant senior population may prefer rental option due to lower maintenance and better accessibility to services. We are planning to include amenities and services tailored to the needs of the aging population. Also, many rural municipalities have recognized the need for diverse housing options in their official plans, and our project aligns with these broader regional housing goals, excuse me, and contributing to the long-term community sustainability. Ramara, being in Simcoe County and close to the recreational areas, experience seasonal fluctuations in population, and again, catering a need for flexible rental options. Our proposal could serve both apartment for resident and seasonal worker, or even a long-term tourist. Next slide, please. The other reason for proposing this project is the economic benefit, which is significant. The proposal will stimulate local economic development by creating jobs during the construction phase and beyond. It will also contribute to the long-term economic growth by attracting new residents, which in turn will increase demand for local goods and services. This number of new residents will support local business and increase consumer spending, ensuring that Ramara remain economically healthy community. Additionally, the project will contribute to increased tax revenue for the municipality, which can be reinvested into the community services, infrastructure, and other initiatives that benefit the community. Next slide. Our project is strategically aligned with provincial and municipal housing strategies, as already described by the township staff. By addressing the specific need of the community and adhering to the broader range of the policy goals, we are contributing to the long-term growth and sustainability of the area. Next slide, please. The development will provide numerous benefits to the community. Economically, as I mentioned, it will boost local business by increasing foot traffic near Highway 12 and by increasing the number of water and sewer users, potentially lowering costs for all residents. Environmentally, the project will utilize existing infrastructure and minimizing its impact on the environment. And socially, the development proximity to the essential services like schools, parks, and grocery stores support communities' growth by making better use of the available land in the full settlement area. Overall, the development will leverage existing resources to provide significant economic, environmental, and social benefits to the community, all while enhancing the quality of life for current and future residents. Next slide, please. The current housing market in Ramara presents significant challenges. According to the Rural Housing Initiative, as of April 2024, the average market rent in Ramara is more than $2,200, with one-bedroom unit renting $1,850 and two-bedroom $1,950 and the three-bedroom units for $3,600. In June 2024, there were only 7 homes, 1 apartment, and 1 basement were available for rent, highlighting a significant undersupply of housing units. Ramara is currently underserviced by 250 housing units, underscoring the urgent need for additional rental apartments or properties. Next slide. So to summary, the minor variance we are requesting will bring significant benefits to the community by making better use of available land and encouraging responsible development. Our proposal offers an attractive housing option that meets the need of both current residents and future generations. This development provides valuable downsizing option for senior and affordable housing for young families and supporting the local community. Based on the proceeding, we feel that the development can be economically viable and bring both monetary and non-monetary value to the community. And from a regulatory perspective, again, as touched by the staff, there are very minor changes to the zoning required with all levels of government policy. And we are eager to move forward with the project with the required study to update the site plan approval. Next slide, please. And as a final statement, we look forward to your support to advancing this project, which promises to deliver substantial benefit to the Ramara community. And thank you for your attention and listening.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess the next is any comments or questions from members in the audience. Sir, would you state your name, please?
My name is Chris Edwards. I live in the other farms.
Okay.
Sorry, apologies for the interruption, but you will have to speak into a
You
mic
have to
so
speak
that
to
they
the
can
mic
hear it
so that
online.
everyone can hear.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have some questions. More now I've listened to that. Allegedly, these are for senior citizens. Does it have a wheelchair? Is it wheelchair accessible? Does it have an elevator? Because every senior development I've ever seen has always been single story with flat access. I live next to one in the UK. I've seen some others over here. And if it's got stairs, it's not senior. The access behind my property will severely impede my business. I think it was a little disingenuous using a Victorian town of Beaton as an example for the setbacks, because when I spoke to the planning department here about putting a tool shed on the back of my garage, they said that It's only applicable if the my workshop is set back 3 meters from the property line. So it seems a bit funny that a major development has no setback, and yet my little workshop must comply with the setbacks. The 10 spaces at the front can't be considered because they are temporary. They've prepared to dual Highway 12 a little bit south of here. It's already, there's a whole bridge just north of Beaverton that's ready for the dual carriageway. So obviously the MTO are looking at something. Maybe they'll bypass, maybe they'll dual it. If they do widen the road here, obviously I'll lose my building because it's built right on the sidewalk. You know, the old pharmacy.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of questions like if these are low cost rental units, cheaper vehicles tend to be the bigger vehicles. So having smaller spaces, it's already looking at the picture of it, the access in and out of spaces is going to be tight anyway. And again, now I'm a senior and my driving's not as good as it was when I was 40, still decent, I hope. And it just seems to me not a recipe for success. And far from helping businesses in the town, these 2 businesses will be severely impaired by it, which would be Jolly's and myself. And I think there's probably fire issues from what I've heard. The fire brigade don't like it because they couldn't get a fire engine down there unless the rear access was, because obviously the front's not fire engine accessible underneath there. So the only way of a fire engine getting in, and it'd have to back out, would be down the lane that's between myself and 2 of my neighbours. And there's a lady on the corner of that lane whose house is right on the lane, and having 30 or 40 cars going in and out a day would make her life pretty miserable, I think. I think there's a lot of issues here to not allow the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to make comments?
Good morning. My name is Neil Jolly, ladies and gentlemen. Probably Jennifer did answer some of my questions with the site application for approval on snow removal and garbage and that sort of thing. But some of the other is the variance off the wall of my building. Being an automotive shop, we obviously are, you know, there's torches, there's fuels, there's oils, there's all sorts of flammable stuff. And to me, the building looks as though it's going to be put right on my wall. So with 0 setback, I've had a fireman look at it, a retired fireman, and he looked at it and he said that was a major red flag having that put right there like that. Probably my next concern would be the parking along that wall, the way it juts into the back of my building. Now I have a sloped roof, so there's obviously going to be snow coming off of there, which if the one building is against my wall, it's going to come down and just pile up right on the roof of my building. And on the other section, it looks like it's going to be coming down on at least 3 cars there on the parking spots that I see. And as far as 0, I don't understand the 0 commercial parking, because if you're trying to sell something, like I don't have my customers park over at Subway to get their cars repaired. If you're going to have their business, you got to have somewhere to park the car. Some of the other questions aren't really relevant to this application right at this point. As Chris said, that's definitely going to increase the traffic flow across the back of my business as well as his. The traffic concern coming off of Highway 12 on the weekend, as everybody knows, you can't move on Highway 12 to begin with. Now you got X number of cars trying to turn off of 12 into that parking driveway. I'm not really, I can't say that I'm 100% against development, but it's just so big for that property, you know, and some of the things I just, you know, would really like answers for, and answers to my concerns. as a taxpayer who's been here for, you know, my family's owned it for, as a lot of you know, many, many years. So I'm just trying to get some answers before something bad could happen. And the parking space being reduced, the other thing was the vehicles. You know, I kind of did some measuring and I'm thinking myself, not everybody's driving a compact car. Like you're not going to park a pickup truck like I drive in one of them spots without banging your neighbor's car. So I can see, you know, problems with that as well. So that's about everything that I would have for you at this point anyway, until we hear more on the site application and building stage or whatever from that point. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Neil. Anyone else like to make any comments? Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm MJ Kelly. Hello to everybody. I'm a little nervous, so excuse me.
Just
Thank you. I represent, or I represent the Brecken villagers. There are 9 property owners that are immediately affected in this area. And none of us are against the development of property, of a building on that property. We just find it pretty egregious and impacts us in a way that we've spelled out in our list of concerns. And I do request that you actually read our list of concerns, even though we were, Jennifer, sorry, I don't know which one, were you Jennifer? Or Jennifer, excuse me. Jennifer was kind enough to write back her responses. I appreciate it. All the same, and though some were deemed subjective, they're still really important because we are people and we live in, we build, you know, we build communities, but we are a very important part of this community. And we all really are quite happy with where we live in our properties. And we find that this building is just too big, just too egregious. And 4 stories is a big building. And when you have people on the 3rd and 4th floor that's peering into our backyards, you know, it's really uncomfortable. I can't imagine what it'd be like for any of you. You would feel the same, I would think. The laneway, my property, I'm at 2779 Mary Street. And so basically my property is right beside Bill and Mark's. So it would go behind, it's right behind Jolly's and not quite to the end as Chris's, but my property is where my hedge line is. It's actually 6 feet. It expands on one corner 6 feet into the laneway. So it actually, and through just by use of the laneway, it's just, my property actually is part of that laneway, but of course I allow it to happen. I probably won't if it's expanded, only because I think it's important to kind of have then set property lines and figure out what that is. I think there's a big privacy issue. There's going to be light and noise pollution as well. Those are things that aren't really considered. And none of us are happy about it. None of us are happy about this. The other thing is that we're in a state of climate crisis, and I can't believe that they would minimize the amount of green space. That's just not acceptable. I just don't think that's a good quality of life for anybody to have. The parking, though Jennifer, you wrote that it was subjective about the lack of our view on public transportation here in Brecken. It's not. It is factual that we have no public transportation here in Brecken. It doesn't mean it won't change. It just means it is factual right now. We don't. And so everybody must drive if you work. And with the rents, which you showed on the screen, being 1 bedroom at $18.50, you know, it's not many people, single people that can afford that rent. So it's going to be 2 people. So you're looking at 2 people per apartment to pay the rent on that, if that's what the average rate is. So you're looking at 2 cars trying to fight for 27 parking spaces or 37 parking spaces. Then you have commercial and you have 30 units plus commercial. Where's the staff? Where are the visitors parking? So there's a lot of overflow that's going on. And of course they're going to park at your spaces, you know, and at the pharmacy, people won't really, I doubt that people would actually park along in the baseball diamond. That's not typical of what people will do. But anyways, so I just think it's important that our list of concerns are read, even and respected. I know you'll respect them. I mean, just that they're read and considered when you look at the variances that are being asked of this property. The setbacks and just the impact it has on right to the wall. This isn't Toronto. This is a small town and we all have green space around us. And I think that's important to have. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer any. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I
Thank
really
you.
do.
Any other further comments from the audience? Ma'am, would you like to, there's a couple questions that were brought up first. Maybe you could, for this proposed development, are you figuring to have an elevator in it or is it just stairs?
It would be just the stairs.
Just the stairs?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. That's one question.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry. No, it would be also elevator. It's already designed in the,
The elevator, see, we didn't see any proposed design plans for the size of the units or anything like that. So that's
yes,
why-
there is also elevator designed.
Okay, that's one. Now, was there another question you'd like to have answered that someone else had brought up?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, the design is actually in the report. The floor plans were included in the report. I can pull them up if you'd like.
Maybe I didn't go far enough down the computer screen.
Yeah, on page 20. Let me just. Usually I have it already pre-shared, so when you share the screen, I've got it there. Let's see how well it comes up here. So this is the conceptual layout.
Yeah, so there would be two staircase and also the elevator just beside the stair. Up,
I
a
can't
little bit up there, yeah.
hear. I'm not sure exactly where.
You go a little bit down, there's a hallway beside, yes, right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And also just to note on that, just Mr. Edwards had noted that that the development is for seniors, is not explicitly for seniors. It's just an example of the type of unit renter.
And also the other concern that came up with regard to the zero setback and then the concern about the fire, it would be all fire rated wall. And it would meet the Ontario Building Code at the stage of building permit.
Okay, anything further any comments further to add before we go to our committee for?
Yeah, and then the other concern came up with regard to the traffic.
Yes.
As the staff mentioned, we're going to actually have a traffic impact study prepared for the site plan approval. But most of the comment that came up, they all will be looked at and reviewed by staff during the site plan approval process, such as the traffic impact that it may have in the community. With regard to the also accessibility, we are based on the Ontario Building Code, we would be required to have 15% accessible units, but the intention is actually go further and beyond that percentage. I'm just thinking what other concern came up. Yeah, and also in regard to the parking, again, as mentioned, there is a 10 surplus parking in front of the building, and which we will use that, and then keep in mind some of the parking, it might be actually using become double use in terms of the business basically working during the day for that surplus parking, they can use those parking. And then during the evening, the resident can use those parking when the business actually closed. So, yeah, so if there's any other question, I can.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if it would be okay for the committee, I had made a couple of notes based on Mr. Edwards, Mr. Jolly, and Ms. Kelly's
Okay,
notes, and I just wanted to comment towards them,
Okay.
if that would be okay. Okay. Okay, so Sorry, my notes are very messier than I thought they would be. Okay, so for the laneway access, there were concerns about like other residents and this property using the laneway access. So just a note, the laneway access is municipally owned property. So if there was any improvements or maintenance that would need to be done as an agreement, it would be dealt with through the site plan application, but it is a public laneway. So that's something I wanted to note. And so for the MTO, there were concerns about the backing up at the stoplight and those types of things. And again, that's going to be dealt with through the traffic impact study. Any fire issues, like there was a comment about the fire department not liking the access. So the fire is circulated on the site plan application. And a lot of fire access routes are dependent on Ontario Building Code provisions. So anything with regards to emergency services, access to the building, that type of thing, those are dealt with at the site plan approval stage. And if it doesn't meet the code, it doesn't happen. So you can't really vary an Ontario Building Code. So it will meet that. Then so same thing with the variance for the wall of the building as the applicant had stated, that's done with Ontario Building Code. Any types of like for the parking, for the navigation of the parking, that is dealt with through site plan approval, part of the site plan.
Jennifer, I have one question before we go to our committee, and
Yeah.
that is, okay, so the building is gonna overhang the township owned property. Is that the case?
No,
It's not.
no, not at all. No,
So the laneway that's going in under that alcove is on the applicant's property, not
Yeah.
the township property.
yeah, that's a private access.
That-
Yeah, the
that's-
laneway just abuts the rear of the
But
property.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the rear laneway we're really concerned about, not the front laneway.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, but-
Okay,
and
that
even-
clarifies that a bit.
And even still, to use that lane for ingress, like to get to the back of the
Yeah.
building, that is reviewed. And then the functionality of the parking lot itself is also shown. That's part of the traffic impact study. The engineers sort of plot out, various sizes of vehicles to make sure that the parking lot is functional. And then lastly, with regards to the height, again, they're not varying the height. But the height that can be approved in the village commercial with units above the first story is 20 meters. Is the maximum building height, and this building is below that. Concerns about light pollution, those are also dealt with through site plan approval. So there's a photometric plan that needs to be created, and things need to be what's called dark sky compliant. So you can't actually shine lights at everybody. It's got to be face down. And then just regards to the comments about public transportation, and in terms of subjectivity versus not subjectivity, I know we were conversing back and forth. I didn't say that the comment about us not having public transit was subjective, because that's true. We don't have it yet. It was just if you are living here, you have to, like, people could be working from home. You could have one person living in an apartment. People could not have vehicles. Like those are sort of the comments that would be subjective in nature, because everybody's circumstance is different, right? So that was sort of what I was trying to get across. And I just wanted you to know that we did read. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think I disagreed with public transit. And again, yeah, so and again, we could sit here and talk it back and forth, because I used to pick my grandmother up and bring her grocery shopping every week when she lived in Beaverton and she didn't have a car. So there definitely are different situations for sure. But that's just sort of where those comments came from. But you are right, there is no public transit here yet. So and I think and then Mr. Edwards had a comment about adding on to a tool shed. So yes, you do need to meet setbacks to get a building permit as of right. But if you wanted to apply for a variance, we can't refuse to accept a variance application. So this is what the applicant is doing in this case, is they are applying for a variance to the bylaw. Okay, and that was all I had, Mr. Chair. Is
Okay,
anything
thank
follow
you.
up?
Go ahead, sir. Yes.
As it stands at the moment, there is a single lane, 9 foot wide laneway that's 200 foot long to this property. Clearly, it will need to be widened if there's going to be 30, 40, 50 cars going in and out every day. And if I lost any of my parking space at the back of the garage, it'd make my business severely impaired because my parking is along the back, and it has been for years. When it was a pharmacy, there's even still signs saying pharmacy parking there on the back of the workshop. That you'd have to widen that lane, and my neighbour on the other side of the lane, her house is right on the lane. You can't really widen it there, can you? I'm concerned about that because it severely impair my business. I wonder what the
Go ahead, Jen, if you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. So any improvements to the laneway will have to be within the laneway size. It is an existing laneway, so it doesn't have to be widened to a 20-meter road allowance. It will be surveyed. Any improvements will be done in consultation with the township. And so it would stay within the confines of the
so it'd
property.
be a single track road.
Sorry?
It'd be a single track road with one lane road with
So
30, 40 vehicles going in and out every day.
So again, that's dealt with that site plan, right? And right now, it's not used as a
I'm
one,
talking the variance for the parking.
yes.
Maybe having less parking, not allowing the variance would be a good thing with such a restricted access.
So it's an existing laneway.
It is.
It is not
It's
the
a
intention.
single lane. Having two-way traffic on it would be inoperable. There's a difficulty, I'm saying.
There would be two lane traffic on it currently, correct? Do the vehicles only come in on the laneway to use your
At the
businesses?
moment, you can only get one car at a time there,
Mhm.
but it's so lightly used, that's not an issue. Yeah, and people can just back up into my place or Jolly's place to let somebody buy. It's not a problem at the moment. I'm just saying that to vary for this overdevelopment, if you don't allow the varying on the parking, it will hopefully limit the amount of units they want to build there, which will take the pressure off everything. So I think the laneway's very important.
So I'm not saying the laneway isn't important. I'm saying is
Talking
that,
about variance.
sorry, if
the
you could
discussion.
stop interrupting me, please. The variance has a condition of a site plan approval, which includes traffic impact study. The traffic coming in off of Highway 12, the traffic utilizing the laneway, and the traffic in and out of O'Neill Street will all be reviewed. If it doesn't work, it's not going to happen. So that is the traffic impact study will review those elements.
Will we get consulted, the residents, the impact study?
It is a public application. The site plan application is public, but under the act, there's no required circulation. Sorry, Mary Jane, you'll just have to come up to, or I guess it's not Mary Jane, I'm sorry, MJ. You'll just have to come up to the microphone.
I think the traffic is exactly what is really important. Because it is used primarily for Jolly Automotive versus business. It directly impacts me. It runs right past the backyard, my backyard. And so my question is it proposed to be one way? Like where it turns in off of Highway 12, people turn in off Highway 12, they look for a parking space, there's no parking. So then they go down the laneway and they keep going. Is that how it's proposed, or is it proposed that it's going to be both ways, a two-way, and people are going to kind of cut in and cut out? Because as it is right now, I was talking with Chris not too long ago, and I was picking up someone that was just in the back laneway. And my car, my Subaru, is parked right there while I was loading up, and someone came down the laneway and then stopped and left because he could not get around me at all. And that's the width of what that laneway is. It's one car wide, and it works fine for these two businesses. So my question to you is it proposed that it's going to be a one-way lane or a two-way lane? And also, when that traffic study happens, I would love to know exactly when that is, because I'd like to take part in that. And I'm sure the Brecken villagers would love to take part in showing and maybe displaying how that laneway works with our cars, as a true function of how that might look.
So the application that's in front of you doesn't propose any change to the access of the public lane. The way that the traffic is proposed on the site plan for the variance at this time is that they will come in off of 12 and then exit out the laneway.
Mhm,
But this, like I said, it will be reviewed at site plan. It is a public document.
mhm.
There is no circulation required under the act to let you know that it's happening.
Is it, just as a kind gesture, would you be willing to do that?
I'm sure we can discuss
Great,
it
that'd be great.
after, and then we could like when the application comes in, like I said, it's public, people can come in, they can read all the documents, they can look at all the site plans. All of that information is publicly available.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, nothing further. I guess, we will go to our committee here and see what their feelings are on it. I know we all probably have different opinions, but I'm going to start off with Dan. How you feel about the application?
Well, a few questions before we get into that. Since we're on the laneway, it's a township owned laneway. How far does it go? Does it provide access to 2294, the one that's going to be merged? Does it run across the back of 22982 too?
So when 2294 merges with that property, that it will just go right into the parking lot, into the rear parking lot.
But does the laneway end at 2298
Pull that up.
or does it go across the back of 2298?
Sorry, Krista, but through the chair, it ends at, which one is that one? Hold on. 2298. So it abuts 2298. Let me just put this to,
So 2294 doesn't have no access from the laneway, just from Highway 12? Or-
yeah, so technically currently, yes, but the application merges both properties together. So there'll be one access, if you look on the screen there, on the north of the current building, there's an entrance there. I think that entrance changes slightly. I can't remember exactly, but the two properties would get merged together. So there'd be one entrance off of 12 and then 2294 and 2298 merged together. So that laneway isn't proposed to be extended. Like the municipality isn't taking a laneway all the way. It just abuts. That's the,
No, my concern is if the laneway goes right across the back of 2298, that's township owned, that services 2294, then they're using that part of the township laneway for parking then.
no. So
So it doesn't go that far.
no, if you look at the screen, right? You can see let me see if I can put it into topo. It might be easier to see. That's better. So these
Okay,
are
it
the
ends
two
there. That's fine.
properties and then it hits it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay,
Uh,
sorry.
Just on that line of thinking. If the variance, where there's 4 variances in front of us here today. The yard setback on the north side where the driveway comes in off Highway 12 now. It shows with the building, and we have no jurisdiction or authority over the building. We have jurisdiction over letting that minor variance go to 0. If we do that minor variance stays with the property. If the design of the building then does get changed, like they could build the building right to the wall without no passageway through to the back. Is that correct? Like the variance stays with the property.
So through the chair, the variance is only as presented. So if there was any changes to that access and that laneway wasn't going to go into the back, then it wouldn't still be as presented. Is that what you're saying? Are you picturing kind of just a full building all the way across with no access through?
Well, if we give a variance that they can build right up to the north lot line, 0 thing, so that stays with the property. What the proposal with their application, what we're seeing is that they're don't put up and you can drive through there. But that could change to say, okay, we have a variance. Well,
No,
if the variance stays with the property, can they not come and change the building?
No, because the variant, there's a condition on if the committee puts the recommended conditions on the decision, the variance is only as proposed. So the variance stays with the property, but as proposed. So if that access laneway doesn't exist, if that, like, so they can't just close that in and say, oh, this is it, because then it's not as it's proposed, so the variance is no longer valid. So before the permit is issued and the site plan, well, before the site plan's approved, actually, and then again, before the permit's issued, they check to make sure that the conditions of the variance have been upheld. And one of those conditions is only as presented.
Okay. The variance is saying that they can build right up to the property line.
With a condition that they don't change the proposal. That they don't change the driveway. They don't change that access through to the rear. They can't get rid of that. It has to stay. 'Cause it's
Okay.
only as proposed.
Okay, moving on. In total, the zone, okay,
Yeah, go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Just clarify, if we have to change, if we, for any reason, we need to change the proposal, and as you picturing that, building that, we need to come back to you. So we need to come back and ask for the permission to change that, to basically get that minor variance of closing the road, which we never intending to do. We need that lane be there. So it's not, the variance stay with the property as you said, but in this situation, there is a condition of as proposed. So for any reason we change the proposal, we need to come back to.
thank you. Our zoning bylaw that we have in place right now, for this development, it requires 64 spaces. And the way I read it, 5 of them are for physically disabled handicap parking. The proposal now with what we're asking, we're having no commercial parking whatsoever. And we're supposed to have 2 handicap parking spot for the commercial. If we're gonna have, I think there's gonna be 3 retail units there, and we're not having no parking and then there's nothing for the handicap. The residential, we're only providing 2. It's in the bylaws asking for 3. We don't have enough parking spots. I'm not sure if what the township bylaw is, if you park in a handicap parking spot, there's a fine, right? So if you don't have enough parking, people are just gonna say, I'm gonna park here. I don't think it's fair. You're gonna have commercial across the road asking people to come and visit your retail outlet and park over here across the street or down at the ballpark. That's my opinion on that one. The open space. The open space is requested 20% of there. We have given staff in the report have given saying other areas in the municipality in the Brecken area have down to 10%. Well, one of them is for the motor vehicle service station and stuff. One is for the village and industrial. One is for the industrial park, and one is for the outdoor storage. The reason why those, I think, were in place for the intent of the bylaw is that they're not residential. Here, you're going to have 30 residential units. People got to have a place to go outside. The applicant has said, well, it's an opportunity for young families to get started. Well, if you have no place for your kids to go outside and play, play on the street, in the parking lot, the parking lot's going to be full. I just have a concern with that minor variance. And now it's the open space, the landscaped open space, parking. You're asking for reduce in parking, and you suggested that in there that you compared Brecken to City of Toronto, City of St. Catharines and stuff. The parking, it does fit there. The handicap one, you got to reduce there. Everybody doesn't drive a compact car. So I have an issues with that. The overall I'm not thinking it's minor when you're asked, the both zoning bylaw asks for 64 parking spots and we're down to 27. And I don't get the concept where we got 10 surplus commercial spots when we require 19 and we're going down to 0. That's my comments, Mr. Chair, at this
Okay.
time.
Thank you very much. Dan, your comments.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Dan. And I also see a lot of the concerns I have are going to be addressed at the site plan control application point. You know, I've heard what everybody has said here and, you know, I can see the concerns. I can see that, where you're, Mr. Jolly, your property, the snow coming off, everything else, and all those different things. But again, I think that will be dealt with at the site plan. But I also have problems with the parking. If you're going to reduce it, as everybody said, people don't drive just compact, they drive. And up here, a lot of people have pickups and everything else. And I can see a concern with the cutting back on the parking. With the landscape, the open space. The only thing I see with that, we do have parks close and school close, and there are places for that, so I don't have a concern there.
Okay, Dan, thank you. Tom?
Okay. There seems to be an awful lot of studies and approvals that still have to be done for this. Like there's the traffic impact, the site plan, fire, everything else. I'm just looking at, should those not be done like first and then go through this process, like defer it until those are done. So everybody has a good feeling about what's going to transpire. Because if the traffic impact hasn't even been done yet, you can't really, I know there's parameters for that and everything else like that have to be met. But just to make everybody, you know, a little more on board, would it not be better to have all that done first?
So,
Go ahead.
through the chair, that is a risk I would say that the applicant is taking, because if the studies come back and they need to make some changes, then they may be back here again in front of the committee. A lot of times, in order to move forward with those studies, you know, you need to sort of have the variance in hand to get the study like for capital, right? So you need to meet your zoning in order to go forward. And that's kind of the first step. So there is, I guess, a risk on the applicant's part, because if they go through this process and then they can't show that it works, then they'll be paying again to come back to the committee, or it will all be for nothing. But it's sort of development can be a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. You kind of want to make sure that you have sort of buy-in, and then you spend the tens of thousands of dollars getting the studies completed. So that's why you have the ability to do the conditions on things like consents and minor variances, because it's, yes, in principle, so long as these conditions can be met. And in this case, with the site plan, the concerns would be dealt with through the SPA process.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, I've heard what the other members have said. I have a feeling this application is a bit premature for the information that we have at this time. I know where Jennifer's coming from, that in order for them to go proceed with traffic studies, they need to already have their variance approved. Is that not the case?
Yes. And do you mind if I just jump back for one thing,
Okay,
just
go
about the
ahead, Jen.
parking? So council recently passed a cash in lieu of parking bylaw.
Mhm.
And the reasons for that is because within specific downtown areas, parking just isn't possible. Or it's not that it's not necessary, but you look at downtowns, they don't often have, 7 parking spaces for every single store, right? You create that walkability, you go from space to space. So we have the cash in lieu of parking bylaw so that applicants can, instead of going through the variance process, pay, I believe it's $8,000 per space. And then that money goes into improvement of parking lots. Part of that review of that establishment of the cash in lieu of parking bylaw, we've also flagged that our zoning bylaw is fairly not outdated with parking, but sometimes it requires a lot of parking. Like just to give you an example, for storage and warehouse establishments, which would be permitted in the village industrial, for storage units, you need 1 space per, I think it's 20 square meters of storage unit. Well, so that means you basically need 1 space per storage unit. And it's just, our parking hasn't really been reviewed since 2005. So part of our update to our zoning bylaw is going to be reviewing these parking policies, looking for concessions for downtown areas, because this is new, right? It's intensification is kind of new to Ramara, but it's needed, right? So it is sort of the first of, and it's coming before that. Zoning bylaw is updated because we're waiting for the OP to finish first, and then we'll do the zoning. So I know that the parking seems like it's a big number, but at the end of the day, with the study and the review, the parking justification study was included in the report, and it shows all of the parking lots. There's lots of places that have municipal parking lots and people walk to the stores. So just creating that complete community, that achievable, if you can walk within 15 minutes type of style. And that's what the policies are supporting. But just to answer your question, sorry to go back about that, it's just in order to get funding to get the studies done, you need to meet the zoning. So it is a little bit of a catch-22, right? And so to put to not be able to get those, to demonstrate, and then vice versa. So I guess the safeguard here is that by having this as a condition, never is it, well, this is what the zoning permits, so we have to shove it and make it work. They still have to demonstrate that what they're doing is going to work. It's just it's a little bit of chicken and egg. And that's where the conditions on the variances are great. And the committee can add conditions. You can, as long as they're relevant and applicable, conditions are a great tool.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Well, I'm just going back to what Dan has alluded to with the parking for the commercial business in front. If the residences are all filled, let's say every residence got a car, we only have 27 and we got 30 residents, they're going to be parking full time in front of the commercial buildings. And so commercial people come along and there's no parking space for them, which to me doesn't seem right. I'm just not happy with the whole thing. Is, to me, there's too much on too small an area of land. And you have most apartment buildings or whatever, they have a visitors parking spot, several spots for that. Well, that hasn't been accommodated on this plan really, other than the fact that either park in a municipal lot here or park somewhere on Mary Street. So and again, the MTO study, I know if they said no, you can't come in off of Highway 12, because we all know on northbound on Highway 12 on either a Friday night or a Saturday morning, you're going to be blocking traffic right up trying to make a left turn when everyone comes up to the lights, the red light, and people want to turn left into that apartment building. And so I just have a feeling the MTO may not approve it, in which case the applicant would have to look for some other option of buying some property on Mary Street and having an access in that direction. But anyways, that's just my opinion on it. I really think I know where you're coming from, Jen. We have to prove the variance before these studies can be done. But I wish we knew more information about how this MTO study was going to come out. before we made a decision. But again, I respect the fact that without the variance being approved, you're not going to go ahead for the MTO study.
And just to note on that, the MTO will have to approve it, right?
Yeah.
Because the MTO has a building and land use permit that they need to get before they can get a building permit, and the MTO is circulated and the site plan isn't approved without MTO clearance. So there are lots of, and if the MTO. And so the MTO, I'm not sure why, but did not put in any formal comments on the application, but I spoke with Colin about it. And he basically said that you can have, they may allow for some required parking if you can demonstrate that the peak flows or something along those lines. So he said these lots are small and the MTO understands that, and it's something that's taken into consideration through the actual application itself. He also confirmed that the MTO does not have any plans to widen Highway 12, and we had a conversation about how it's difficult to have these policies because it's always if MTO ever decides to either widen or would they bypass, no one knows, right? They have no plan to. So we discussed how it's a little bit, I guess, frustrating would be the right word, because you almost don't want to stop something because maybe something might happen one day, right? It's very tricky, but by making it so that those spaces, although they're like, because technically there's 37 spaces on this development, but by calling them surplus, then the MTO doesn't have to have a barrier to pay out because a business is no longer viable because now you took their 2 parking spaces, right? So that's what the MTO is looking for. That's why allowing them to be deemed as surplus is a safe hold, because it protects the interest of the MTO.
Okay, one other question, and that's all we've been alluded to, which bothers me. For years, I've been on this committee, and I know on residential, we definitely couldn't go for 0 setbacks. I know this is a new policy, I guess you're talking about, that they can, for other jurisdictions, they have 0 setbacks. I just feel like there should be 1 meter setback on both the north and south property line, and just for a little bit of space or something like that. But however, that's just the way it is. I'm not happy with the way that is, but
Sorry.
anyways, go ahead.
Sorry, if I could just note on that. So you're referring to the single family dwelling
Yeah.
minor variance
Yeah.
applications that come in on
Yeah.
shoreline areas
Yeah.
and that type of thing. So those, we generally like to see a 1.2 because of the fire and the building code and everything separation. But in this case, because you're in a downtown, right, it's similar to a semi-detached, right? You build a townhouse, you come in after, you do a part lot control exemption or a consent. That building has a shared wall. It's constructed with that intention. And so that's where it's not a new policy. It's just a different area, right? It's a different character. This is a downtown area. So you kind of want that. And then if you did require, sort of a 1 meter setback on every property in a downtown, you'd have a lot of little laneways with grass. And even if you look at the buildings next door, they constructed kind of a wall in between the old bank and the hall, so that, you didn't have people kind of going in the dark alleyways of the downtown. So but it's just an example, right? Like, you think about a downtown, like this is our downtown, as bizarre as it is, it's on Highway 12, but according to the government, that is our downtown. So it's loud and there's lots of transports, but it's Brecken.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jen, for clarifying a few things. You go ahead and ask. I may not be able to answer. Jen may have to answer for you, sir.
You'll just have to put your mic on because you're on the internet.
It's all very well and good not having a setback because it's what you're saying, and your examples of Victorian buildings that don't comply with code anyway. What about maintenance? How's Mr. Jolly supposed to maintain his property when there's something built right against it? And how are they supposed to maintain and wash the windows above Mr. Jolly's property? They're going to stand on his roof and do it with scaffolding. You need to leave a setback for maintenance. It's a nightmare if you don't. Just a point I thought I'd bring up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else on the committee have any further comments to make?
Just the one maybe through the applicant, would they be willing to accept if we deferred it and maybe come back with a smaller development plan to accommodate the parking or something like that? To me, I can't support it the way it is. So I could support a deferral if the applicant is willing to come back with a smaller development plan that can fit the site. It's up to you, like, to me, I can't support it the way it is.
Through the chair, we look at the different options, and then in order to accommodate as many as parking that is possible, it's in terms of the financially billable. It's that's a number that became. We can definitely look at it again. But again, because of the size of the land and then being financially feasible to have such a development, it's that's how the number came up. But again, we definitely can look at it. And one point that I want to bring up, right now there is a 27 plus 10, so 37 parking spots available. That means that every resident can get one parking, and there's a 7 parking with left for a commercial building. So it's not that there's a lack of parking for the resident. The only things that we put it 27 plus 10 surplus, as Jennifer explained, is only for the purpose of the MTO, which they already told us that they basically not gonna take out that parking, at least not soon. And if they do one day, it's not only the problem for this property, it would be problem for the property adjacent of it and the property adjacent, like the whole strip of the Highway 12 going to have the same problem. So it's gonna, something beyond that one property need to be looked at. So if you look at the whole thing, there's a 37 parking spot available, 1 for a residence unit and 7 for the commercial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have any further comments? Your feelings on it before we call for a vote?
Yeah, one of my concerns is we do need housing. We've lost a lot of housing developments already. Yeah. The couple things here with the parking and that, yeah. Are they gonna be able to come back and deal with that? It doesn't sound like it, but I think a lot of things are gonna be dealt with the site plan control application, and I'm just, yeah, just on the wall here, whether we should go ahead with this and let them deal with it and get things moving at least.
Tom, any further comments from you?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm sort of between the devil and the deep blue sea, I guess, on this. I know we definitely need housing. That's not a question we need to ask ourselves. We all know that. And I know that they can't proceed unless the variance is approved. There's a lot of unanswered questions. We know which will probably come through in the site plan and the MTO study. And so I guess I'm going to ask for a motion one way or the other, either to approve it or deny it. and we'll vote on it from that point on. You would have moved to approve it? Do we have a seconder? Well, I guess if there's no seconder, that motion dies on the floor. Do we have a motion to deny it? Or to defer it? For some,
Talk to the applicant is not, says what's before us is what's feasible for them, and they didn't recommend deferral. I'd make the motion that it be denied as presented.
we have seconder for that motion. That motion is seconded. All those in favor of the motion to deny the application?
Sorry, do you mind if I just interject here for a minute? Just if you are going to put forward a motion to deny the application, you will need to provide a reason for the denial in case that it ends up at the OLT. So there will have to be a reason stated for the denial of the application.
Denial. That we as a committee, if that do not feel that the variances is minor. The parking issue does not accommodate the commercial there, the handicapped, the number for the residents, the development is just too big for the property.
And sorry, just to clarify, so the accessible parking does meet the Ontario regulation for accessible parking spaces.
The size does, but not the number.
Yeah, so it would be under the OREG, it's 4% of the required spaces, which is the 2 spaces. So is it just then because of the number of parking, like just because of the parking
The
reduction?
number for the handicap parking, according to the bylaw, that it requires, I think it was 5 in total. And in the proposals, they're only proposing 2, and that's just for the residential, and they're not proposing none for the commercial.
Yeah, because okay, so just because there's a 0 parking requirement for the commercial, there would be no accessible parking required for the commercial. So I just want to make sure that I have it right.
Right.
So not minor because of the reduction in parking. And sorry, and what was the other part?
Okay. Number, the open space going from 20 to 10%. This is for residential and for the apartment buildings. The other ones that was compared here in the report is for the motors service station, the industrial outdoor parking and stuff there. It's down to 10% because there's no people living there. This here is for 30 residential apartments.
You want to consider the 0 setback as well? Or not?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a concern, as I mentioned earlier, with the setback on the north side. That what's proposed in front of us. I know that if we grant that, if that variance was granted for 0% or 0 there, that the variance, to me, the variance stays with the property. So then somebody can come along and say, well, we got a variance. Maybe they sell the property. The owners sell the property and say, here's a variance you can build. Oh, and they say, we don't like that design. We will build something else. And I think it's very important to have that access from Highway 12 down that north side to the back parking lot, not just utilizing the lane.
Go ahead, Jen.
So through the chair to Member McMillan, as it was explained, the variance is only as presented. So if there are not 10 surplus parking spaces or the laneway is removed, then the variance would no longer be valid. I also just want to bring to committee's attention, because the application is supported by staff. And if the committee, and staff are of the professional opinion that the outstanding issues are dealt with through the site plan application itself. If the committee were to deny the application and it was appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, a report would have to go to council And council would have to go through the process of endeavoring to see if they can find another planning consultant to represent the committee at the OLT, as well as legal fees, as I would not be able to represent the township at the OLT due to the fact that I have supported the application in my professional capacity. Just so the committee is aware, just wanted to bring that to your attention.
If I may, through the chair, I also just wanted to flag that provincial policy within the Planning Act, there are provisions for parking for additional residential units. However, where a zoning bylaw has been amended, can allow for zero parking to accommodate the needs for housing. So that is a bill that has been recently passed within the provincial policy statement as well as the growth plan. This is a settlement area, a downtown core, an area for growth and for intensification. The proposal overall does not conflict with the township's official plan, county's official plan, nor any of the provincial policies. The main conflictions which are requested to be varied are due to our zoning bylaw. We do have parking provisions that are more restrictive than both the Ontario Building Code as well as the Accessibility Act. The proposal does meet those existing regulations. So if the committee is denying this application, it should be based on policy. So if there is, policy that you're seeing, that would make sense. But the applicant would, if it's denied and it's not based on policy, then it likely could go to the OLT. So I just kind of wanted to bring to your attention the fact of the role of the committee to make decisions based on policy. Thank you.
Thank you. It's before us, we're a committee, and we're supposed to look at the forecast if it's minor and all this, the neighborhood and stuff like that. This committee has the discretion to do that. We have the zoning bylaw in front of us. It doesn't meet the zoning bylaw. They come and ask for a variance, and we don't think it, I don't think, that's why I made the motion, that it doesn't meet the requirements. And I think if it does get passed, I think it all is doing is creating headaches for the township.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Now we're gonna call for a vote on this.
Sorry if I may, through the chair, I just want to
Okay.
clarify the motion. So the motion, as stated by Mr. McMillan, just to make sure that you are agreeing on the motion. We as a committee do not feel that the variance is minor due to the reduction in parking. Open space going from 20% to 10% is not appropriate for residential use and due to concern with setback on north side of property. Is that the motion, or do you have anything further to include in your decision?
Yes, that's fine.
That's what we're voting on right
Thank you.
now. So all those in favor of the motion to deny the application, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Those for the application or against? Okay. The application has been denied. Okay, on this particular application, I guess we'll move forward with the next application. Would you like to move forward on that, Carissa?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, we're going to be discussing consents files B424 and B524. Location is 131 Cortlandt Street. Owner and applicant is Murray Whitney. So in terms of the purpose of the applications for consent have been submitted by landowner Murray Whitney for the creation of 2 new lots. Lot 1 is proposed to have a total land area of approximately almost half an acre. And lot number 2 is proposed at the same size at 0.46 acres. Each new lot will have a frontage of approximately 30.48 meters, and the retained lands will total approximately 0.91 acres in land area with a lot frontage of 60.96 meters. And then here's just a site plan sketch showing the retained lands as well as the two proposed lots, which are decent size and have frontage on open roads. So in terms of circulation, the Ramara Building Department didn't have any concerns. Infrastructure Department supports the lot creation. They did note on lot 2, the driveway to be located near the northern lot line to allow for safe access and sight lines to the property, which is due to the hill and curves in the road in this section on Cortlandt Street. And then we also had a resident, Marty Whitney, comment support of the proposed lots, and those comments are attached as an addendum to the agenda, and currently no further comments have been received. In terms of the report highlights, the subject property is within the boundaries of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. It's under the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority's regulation. It is within an area for growth according to the growth plan, and is designated settlements according to the County of Simcoe official plan, and is designated village according to Ramara's official plan. The lots in proximity to significant forest wooded areas. So an environmental impact study was conducted to confirm appropriate measures are taken during development, and to ensure no negative impacts to the natural features. The property is zoned a village residential, village commercial, village institutional with a holding provision according to Ramara's zoning bylaw. This is a special holding zone, and it corresponds with future development areas identified in township's official plan. And when the holding is removed through a zoning bylaw amendment, the lands will be zoned village residential exception, whatever number we have available next, and will be included to further amend the village residential zone in order to require a minimum setback of 15 meters from the rear yard of the property to any structures, which is recommended in the EIS to create a natural vegetation buffer. And then further, staff recommend a consent agreement be entered into with the township, and that's to ensure the orderly and appropriate development of the lands, to include the environmental impact study measures, and the location of the entrance recommended by infrastructure. The consent agreement would need to be registered on title so that the mitigation measures are incorporated for the long term. And the proposed lots do have a frontage on an open road to be serviced with individual septic wells, and the proposed and retained lands are large enough to accommodate dwelling units, well, and septic systems. Policies within Ramara County and provincial allow for lot creation within settlement areas. And the suggested motion and conditions. So should the committee find it appropriate to approve these consent applications, the following conditions are recommended. One is satisfying the Township of Ramara financial and otherwise, including the payment of any outstanding taxes and payment of cash in lieu of parkland per lot. And then provisions of a registerable legal description on the parcels to be severed together with an electronic copy of the applicable reference plan. 3 is that the owner enter into consent agreement with the township pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act to ensure the orderly and appropriate development of the land. And then lastly, that the owner obtain a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding provision and implement a site-specific zoning as to enforce a 15-meter rear yard setback for all structures. And the recommendations are that the Committee of Adjustment receive report BP 3024 published to the August 13, 2024 meeting agenda. In that consent applications B424 and B524 be approved with the recommended conditions. The alternatives are that the Committee of Adjustment could deny or defer the applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Mr. Whitney, would you like to come forward and give any comments?
No, we're fine, thanks.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, then. We're gonna go around to our committee here. Dan, your comments, please.
I did a site visit and the sign was up and I read the reports. I have no concerns.
Dan, I'm not sure, Dan, Tom. Sorry.
I have no concerns with the application.
And other Dan.
Yeah, I did a site visit too, and there it's you look at the property and it looks like it should almost be clear cut, the whole thing. It's all those dead ash, everything. It's there. Maybe just a question through the author of the report. Item number 3 on there, that the owner enter into a consent agreement and to ensure the orderly and appropriate development of the land. I'm not sure what all that entails, like,
So the consent agreement would basically include a high level of the mitigation measures recommended in the environmental impact study. So essentially, the reason we recommend a consent agreement is so that if and when down the road the lots are sold, any future landowner going to develop on this lot will be able to follow these measures as they are within they're on title. It's really the best way to ensure that development for the long term is appropriate as it is adjacent natural area features identified provincially. So that is why staff recommend that the consent agreement be registered on title for environmental purposes.
okay, in the report from there, like, I have no problem with the severance or anything like that, but some of the mitigation measures, like, they say, well, you should leave brush piles and stuff like that. And I know the 15-meter setback, that's part of the Holden bylaw, right? I thought it said that in here under item 4.
The environmental impact study recommends for any future development to the lands that there is a 15-meter setback from the rear of the property. And that is to create a buffer for the vegetation and the natural species that are currently habitating. So that is recommended through the environmental impact study, yes.
Okay, that's in condition number 4, because they got to get the Holden bylaw. I'm just not sure if the consent agreement's necessary. Like, I know there's a lot of stuff in there that they said there, like, they talk about the habitat for the bats and stuff. Well, we all know, like, the bats eat mosquitoes and stuff like that. It's probably been 50 years that the township sprays the area for bugs and mosquitoes and stuff. And even this vegetation, the 15-meter setback. If the residential family there, they're not going to let 15 meters of poison ivy and natural vegetation grow in their backyard. These lots aren't really that big. They're only 200 feet deep. By the time you get your setback from the front of the road, you build your house, you have your septic, your well, there's not going to be that much left. And like say, they're only 30 feet, 30 meters wide, 100 feet. But, most houses, time to put a garage on. And I'm just not sure, like, they mentioned in there that they got to watch any machinery on place, that they have no oil or leaks. Does the township have people that go around and say, there's a machine there, I'm going to watch? Like, I'm just not sure that the consent agreement is necessary. That's all. That's my only comment.
Go ahead, Jen.
Through the chair to Mr. McMillan. So the provincial policy lays out when something like a natural heritage evaluation or an environmental impact study is required in order to support development. So it's all about responsible and orderly development. So there are features identified on the adjacent parcel, which is why this was triggered as part of the study. So the setback doesn't require a 15-meter no-mow zone. It requires a 15-meter setback for structures so that it can't be cleared and garages put up and those types of things to protect that feature, okay? Similarly, things that will go in the consent agreement are things like don't cut trees between, May to August because there's nesting. And then it also says, if you absolutely have to cut a tree during that time, you need to bring out an environmentalist or an arborist to make sure that there's no nests in the trees that you're cutting. So it's just to make sure that the development is done in a responsible way that meets provincial policy. The best way to put this in is through a consent agreement, because to try to explain all of that in a zoning amendment is very difficult. Whereas the 15-meter setback for structures, you put that into the zoning because it's forward facing. Somebody says, oh, this is the zoning of my property, I have a 15-meter setback. So that's why that one's going in as amendment, whereas the rest is put in as a consent agreement. that study and that consent agreement make it so that the committee and the municipality is ensuring that the development in our municipality is being done in a responsible way, and it is very important.
Okay, just further thing, not to argue with it. I looked at the township property standards bylaw, the lawn grass cutting bylaw and stuff. Like this 15-meter buffer zone at the back. It says in the long grass thing, grass, weeds, noxious weeds, invasive species. If it goes over a foot, it's supposed to be cut. This is not rural property. This is in the village core of the settlement area, Athley up to Grove and stuff. Then I'm just not sure what, if this consent agreement overrides the property standards bylaw, the lawn grass and cutting bylaw.
So again, through the chair, the 15 meters can have grass and you can get rid of poison ivy and things like that. You just can't put any structures back there. So it's just to create a buffer between the adjacent feature. And it wouldn't trigger the long grass bylaw. But if it did, the consent agreement would override the long grass bylaw. But it's not like the long grass bylaw has to do with unruly, uncut, noxious weeds, those types of things. Those would still be able to be addressed. Like nobody's going to want to have a bunch of poison ivy in their backyard. They will get rid of it. Again, it's not a no-mow zone, which means don't touch it ever. You're allowed to have, the ability to take care of it, manicure it, that type of thing. It's just no structures within the 15 meters.
Just clarification through the chair. When we say structure, you're talking a structure that needs a building permit, or because and any structure like a pub, like you can have a garden shed now, what's it, 160 square feet or something?
No, that wouldn't be permitted because that's a structure under the zoning bylaw. So
It
there'd
would?
be no sheds, no garages, regardless if they need a permit
No,
or
nothing.
not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I looked at the property on Sunday morning, and considering that I think the best use of the property is homes, considering all those dead ash trees are gonna, if it's left, they're all gonna fall down and make a heck of a mess to start with. Anyway, so the best use of the property is a home, and hopefully the homeowner will, that builds a home will plant some trees that aren't, other than ash. So I have no problem with the application at all. And it seems like we're all in agreement. Could I have a motion to approve the moved by Dan and second by the other Dan, that the application be approved? All those in favor, raise your hands. The application is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Whitney, for coming, and good luck with the. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be as contentious. Let's put it that way. Thank you. We still got to do the minutes. Oh. My speaker on. We have to have the minutes from the last meeting. Has everyone seen the minutes, read the minutes? Are there any errors, additions, or addendums that need to be done with the minutes? Okay, then I would call for a motion, moved by Tom, second by Dan, that the minutes of the July meeting be approved as presented. All those in favor? That's carried. Now, we had some further on the agenda of Carissa, is it just basic information that you were providing for us about proceed?
Yes, so there as a draft Committee of Adjustment procedural bylaw, which is basically to update the existing one from 2018. This was brought to the committee already, I believe, May 14th. And now we're just bringing it back as the Committee of Adjustment does have the authority to adopt the procedural bylaw under Section 9(2) of the Statutory Powers and Procedure Act. And Section 2382 of the Municipal Act. So we just wanted to bring that approval in alignment with those policies. So we did present to council, but ultimately it's the committee's decision to approve and adopt this procedural bylaw. So the policies included in the draft bylaw were to establish recirculation, errors, and inactive files protocol because the existing one didn't really have much of that. And that was included on the agenda showing the proposed updates. They were highlighted yellow. So it's up to committee today to decide whether they want to approve the proposed bylaw or if they suggest any revisions.
Well, we did back some time ago when this sort of came up, we did discuss some of these issues and especially the recirculation things and like that. And I think probably what we're proposing now is probably an improvement from what we had. So how is everyone's feeling is, do we need a vote on that then? Do we? Okay. Go ahead. Yes, we'll discuss.
Just maybe a couple of housekeeping. On page 2 there, duties of the Committee of Adjustment, the second bullet down under 2.1 or second from the bottom, duties of the chair where it says to adjourn the meeting when the business is concluded. We do that by motion, don't we?
Yes.
But it says it's the duty of the chair to adjourn the meeting. As a technicality, we always make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, the chair puts
We have
forth
to
the
vote on it.
motion.
And then
Yep.
majority don't, the chair has no say.
The chair would call for the motion. I would
Yes,
say.
so that,
Oh,
And that
okay.
would be
Yep.
the way it should be worded there.
Anyhow, that was that. One other one here I had. Okay. Under section 7.2.3 on page 139 of the. And it's there about if the applications are withdrawn, incurred there. And then it further goes on to 7.25. The director of planning has the authority and discretion to make any amendments to section 7.2.3 of this bylaw. Well, I thought it was just council that had the authority to amend and pass bylaws.
so what that's referring to is if there is a situation with an application where somebody has requested a refund, we have a refund policy that has existed since 2004 that is now merged with this bylaw. However, if there was a situation, the director of planning would have the authority to, allow for a refund, perhaps where maybe there's already been a review. It just does allow for a little bit more flexibility, and that is written actually in consideration of an applicant. So we just wanted to have that clause. If the committee doesn't agree with it, we can update it as needed. It was just, although I didn't change, staff haven't changed the existing refund policies, but we did add that clause in order for a unique circumstance if one was presented.
My feeling on that, Mr. Chair, is that council sets the plan and fee schedule on recommendations from staff. They're the ones that set the fee schedule and stuff. They should be, if there's any refund requested, they should be the one granted. If it's not, everything else is straightforward here. If it's under these circumstances, that's in the policy, council doesn't. But then to give the authority to the director of planning, what's that 7.25, says that he can mend this and change it. It's council's bylaw order, because right at the back, it says the mayor's gonna sign it and the clerk.
So the director, if it is the committee's bylaw, we definitely, in terms of that, provision 725, if the committee doesn't deem it appropriate, this is the bylaw you are approving. So if you recommend a revision, that can be made. Essentially, the reason it was added, was because, if an application is withdrawn and we haven't even circulated, they only get 50% back. So that was in consideration of the applicant. However, if the committee feels that the refund policy as existing should remain, then we can just remove that section. It's not a problem either way, but just let us know the direction you'd like us to go.
In the past, Carissa, there's been a couple of instances when it has come before us, whether we refund a certain amount of the fee. There's been some applications. I think we said, no, the staff has done too much work on this. We're not going to give any refund on it, but there is some that we have given a certain percentage back. Is what you're implying now is that it will be our authority, or the director of planning will make that decision?
So any refunds is done on an administrative level. The refunds are not brought to, we never discuss, like when I'm presenting an application, I don't say, hey, the application has paid the application fee. And if you deny it, or like, it's not really something that's brought forth at the meeting. It is dealt with at an administrative level. If somebody had submitted complete application, and then it goes through various processes, really it's just you get a 50% if we've accepted it, and then even if we haven't circulated and you want to withdraw, you get a 50%. If we have circulated, you don't get a refund. And so that is the current policy, and that's the policy that has been in place since 2004 for Committee of Adjustment applications. However, it's not something that the committee is reviewing. It's more, municipal collecting of fees for the work staff are doing. So again, this provision was just brought so that it does give the director of planning wiggle room if there ever was a unique circumstance. However, if the committee feels that leaves too much vague and leaves that too open, we could remove that item 725.
It should, my feeling, it should be out of our hands as far as any of our input on it. It should be just the staff, and then if it isn't the staff of something major, then it should go to council then, but the staff should be dealing with it, I think.
Right. So it's completely up to the committee if they want that item 725 kept within this draft bylaw, or if you would just prefer it be removed. That's totally up to the committee on what they would like to
How do
do.
you feel, Dan, on that?
Perfect. Okay, so basically I would just revise the motion to be approved, provided that 725 is removed.
We could make a motion to accept the draft bylaw with that that's revisited or whatever on it. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
So we do need a motion for that then. So I'm calling for a motion on that particular item then. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Dan, second by the other Dan. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, is that basically all we had, Carissa?
Yes.
Very
yes.
good then. So I'm gonna call for a motion to adjourn at 11:33. All those in favor? I don't even know whether we have to do that, but
Thank you.
Dan, coming down water. I know, if you're not looking up and you're writing down, you need to know. It's Dan.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, bring it up